So Guillaume will speak about that today.
Thank you, Radek. Okay, so this is me, Guillaume Rivalle, working for Clarivate for a few years. I'm going to speak about the analytics. It's too loud, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to speak about the analytics around the Web of Science core collection data and what they mean and what they could mean for publishers as well. A lot of our content is used by universities, by researchers to strategize their publication. So not just to search for information, but also strategizing their research, collaboration, hiring the right people and so on. And publishers as well as funders are using the core collection in the same matter, let's say. But my presentation today is going to focus on the publisher use case, let's say. And I'm going to give you a few examples. I'm not going to be able to be exhaustive because I only have half an hour for you today, but I just want to give you a glimpse of the angles that are available to you, from whether you're using the Web of Science or Insights or JCR or Essential Science Indicators, in order to better understand the landscape in which you are publishing. So the principle of our analytics is that we, of course, have the Web of Science core collection as a source, and this is used to feed Insights platform, which has journal citation report, essential science indicators, and Insights benchmarking and analytics. So we are speaking about 62 million publications that are sent to these tools and that are grinded, and from which you can extract information such as metrics, but also trends, identify important authors, the authors, that you should publish, for example, or accept the papers from, maybe. And this is done because we have a very solid foundation. The Web of Science core collection has a lot of metadata, and this metadata is key for you to be able to run some reliable analytics. And I will go through that in the presentation. Insights benchmarking and analytics provides you with many different metrics. These metrics are very relevant and clever in a way. Some are absolutes, some are just counts, basically, of amount of papers, amount of citations, average citations, percentage of documents cited, H indexes. And some others might be a bit more interesting in the sense that they are using context and are normalized. And this is very important when you're looking at citation impact, to be able to normalize what you're looking at. A citation doesn't have the same value if it's from an old paper, if it is citing an old paper or a new paper. The citation doesn't have the same value if it is citing a social science paper or an organic chemistry paper. So, of course, normalization is very important, and I will cover that also in my presentation, just to explain very quickly how we normalize. Of course, there's other indicators, such as performance, amount of documents in top 10% documents, amount of documents in top 1%. There's also collaboration analysis. The amount of international collaboration is something I will be looking at also here from the perspective of a journal. I think it's very interesting to look at that. And of course, the usual journal metrics that calculated from journal citation report and based on the Web of Science core collection indexes, such as impact factor, 5-year impact factor, and so on. Journal citation report has evolved last year. You might have noticed that the journal page is totally different. We are looking now at a much more transparent, let's say, way of presenting you with the metrics around your journals and other journals, of course, indexed in the core collection. This is an example of a Polish journal, of course, and what you see is an analysis, very quick analysis of the evolution of their impact factor within the Web of Science core collection. But you can always drill into this. You can always see its position within the two categories in which it is indexed. And of course, very important, this was really important for us, is to make the calculation of the impact factor much more transparent. So right now, when you're looking at journal citation reports, you really have a way to understand this value, this impact factor that we are calculating. Where is it coming from? What are the citable items? What are the limitations as well? The simplicity of that metrics is its strength in a way, because you can really clearly understand how it's built and where it's coming from. And we We are, of course, listing, your citable items, where are the citations coming from. You can always now link even to the Web of Science record to really understand how we've made that linking and what is this paper that was cited from your journal. We even have the other metrics displayed here, and with the ability to look at them in graph, trends, basically, time trend for these different metrics. So I wanted to insist on that because there is such a page for every single journal in the journal citation report now, and it's a very interesting way for you to understand in detail, in full transparency, how these metrics have been calculated, and of course, really understand a bit more about how a journal is living within the citation network. What are its influence. It's not always just the impact factor. It's how fast things are cited, for example. The immediacy index is interesting because it's a way to see how fast your papers are being cited by other journals. Also, 5-year impact factor is important. The eigenfactor is also a very interesting metric that you should discover. So, I just want to insist on what we've done on the JCR because I think it has a lot of value with regards to details, and details are extremely important. Okay, let me give you a few examples now on how to, let's say, assess and look at different things using our tools. This is about open access. So what I'm showing you here is the amount of, I'm looking at all Polish journals and everything they've published between 1990 and 2019. And the amount of documents that I can find for these journals within the Web of Science core collection. And of course, and Jeff mentioned it, we did implement an algorithm that is now able to identify, in a live way, the open access status of the papers. So you can see the proportion of open access. And of course, Insights gives you analytical tools that are, allowing you to analyze this content. I think this is very powerful. I'm just looking at the full content of open access here for these journals, but you could do this on an individual journal. You could do this on just the DOAJ content of your journal, and see the evolution across time of that proportion of the open access documents within these sources. So this is just an example. I took all Polish journals because I didn't want to highlight just one specific journal here, but you could do this, of course, on any source, available within the Web of Science core collection to understand, let's say their policy with regards to open access and how this is increasing or decreasing in their content. And I think it's interesting to find that, I'm looking at 70% here almost, for 2018 of open access content within these Polish journals, from 1990 to 2019. About open access, you might also be interested to decompose it by categories. So this is the same, no, it's not the same group actually. It's all Polish journals from 2015 to 2017. And this is the amount of open access that we can find for these journals within certain categories. Big categories, of course. I haven't used the Web of Science categories here. I've used aggregated categories so that, it's simple to look at. What's interesting is the amount of, I think, open access, differences of open access content between, social sciences, let's say, and life sciences, clinical sciences as well, with a big content of open access. These are things, of course, that you can do with our tools and to better understand the output, within open access content. The impact of open access is also very interesting to look at. There's always the question, okay, are we pushing for open access? Are we going to make our stuff visible, freely available? Does it have an impact on impact? Does it increase basically the usage of our content? Does it increase the citation rates of the content? And I did look at the different categories. Again, the same categories that you've seen in the previous page. I'm looking at here the subscription content impact in these different categories. And here I'm looking at the open access impact in these categories. And as you can see, it's consistently higher. The open access content consistently for these Polish journals from 2015 to 2017, the open access content has a higher rate of citation. I'm looking at average here The indicator I'm using is the average amount of citation per document, okay, for these documents. So I think it's very interesting. You've got the overall number here, the percentage of, sorry, I'm not looking at the average. I'm looking at the percentage of cited documents. So the amount of cited documents, the amount of documents that have received at least one citation. And yes, the impact is higher for every single category. What's striking as well is in social sciences and arts and humanities, the jump is quite strong compared to life science, where the open access doesn't really have a strong effect in terms of impact. So these are things, just examples of what you could do, within the platform. I'm looking at also, and that's what Radek was mentioning, your journal might not be indexed in the Web of Science core collection. You still have access to our solutions, and you still have access to insight into what other journals are doing and how they are publishing, what is their strategies. I took the example here of Q1 journals from Poland, and I just took a few of them here on my screen. You can always analyze this content. I think I took the example of Acta, Paleontologica, Polonica, and I was interested at the percentage of international collaboration of the papers that have appeared in that journal. And what you're looking at is from 1994 till today, the proportion of documents that they have published that is containing an international collaboration. International collaboration is something that actually, usually, almost 100% of the cases is helping impact, because you are collaborating with another country. You're publishing a paper with another country, an institution from another country. You are actually expanding the reach of your discoveries. And this journal, obviously has increased the amount of international collaboration in their papers. They used to be in Q4 in these early years. They're now in Q1. I'm not saying this is only because of international collaboration, but there's an interesting trend here to see that they've jumped from 25% of international collaboration to today the double amount. So 50% of what they've published is from international collaboration. So when you receive a manuscript from a researcher, one of the questions you might wonder is, is this just a mono-national, let's say, paper, or is it a collaboration? If it's a collaboration, an international collaboration, therefore, you might have a better chance for this article to get cited. So that could be one strategy, is to insist and try to promote international collaboration in your authors. Other strategies, I'm looking at here organizations within this journal as well, but non-Polish. I've removed Poland from the organizations, and I'm looking at the amount of papers of different organizations within this journal. So that could be an interesting angle. You look at the different organizations of authors that have published in this journal. And what you have here is the total amount of documents that they have published, and that could be an indication that that could give you some insights into which organizations are publishing in this journal. But there are other metrics, very interesting metrics in insights, and these are called normalized impact. There's two ways of normalization in insights. There's by category and by journal. And I think these are very interesting metrics. So I'm going to explain them to you because it will help you understand what we mean by context. And it's very important in terms of bibliometrics, when you look at citation, to use context. So let me start with the categorization, the normalization by category. So I'm going to ask you to think a little bit mathematically, just to look at this screen. And I'm just taking an example here of an article published in 2013 in Clinical Neurology and cited 15 times. So can you tell me, is 15 is high or low? Depends on the subject. It depends also on the year of the context. The context can be year, can be subject, and can be document type as well. Reviews are more cited than articles, and so on. So what we do in Insights is that we do a normalization. We do two normalizations. The first one is by category. We calculate what we call a category expected citations. We take every document in clinical neurology, published in clinical neurology in 2013, and we calculate the average amount of citation they have received. And they have been cited 13.03 times. So 15 is higher than expected. How much higher is this? Well, it is 1.15 times above, because we do 15 divided by 13, and we get 1.15. This document has an impact that is 15% higher than the category expected citation. So that's for the category of clinical neurology. So this is very interesting when you look at an individual document, but it becomes even better when you start looking at a group of documents. So if I'm going back to this Polish journal and the organizations that have published in it, and now I'm sorting my list by category normalized citation impact. What University of Zurich has published in this journal has an impact that is 81% above the expected impact in that category. So this is a very strong group of documents. It's not the CNRS, which was first in my previous page. Actually, University of Zurich, what they've published in this journal, in the context of the category, has an impact that is 81% higher than expected. So for this journal, definitely when they receive papers from this university, they might think, okay, if I'm looking at this, apparently when I publish them, I'm getting a very strong impact. So maybe I should carry on publishing, authors from this university. That's what publishers are doing today, by the way. They are looking at Insights to find these indicators, to see, which institution is bringing me a higher impact, which authors is bringing me a higher impact. So that's just one example. Another metric that is even better, I think, in your case, than the category normalized citation impact is the journal normalized. So let me jump just ahead. The journal normalized citation impact is looking at the context of journal. So once again, I'm normalizing this time not on category, but on journals. This document was cited 15 times. What is the average amount of documents, what is the average amount of citations that documents from this journal, the movement disorders, published in 2013, have received? 19.98 citations. So for the journal, 15 is actually lower than expected. This document is not really helping this journal getting a higher impact. It's actually decreasing the impact of that journal, because in the context of that journal, 15 citation is not enough for this paper. Okay, so that's the journal normalized citation impact. And of course, I can do now an analysis by institutions, by journal normalized citation impact. And which organization is helping this journal? It's the mostly helping this journal in terms of impact. It's the Swedish Museum of Natural History. What they have published, these 26 documents that they have published in this journal, the impact is actually almost the double impact of the journal. So it's actually very strongly helping the influence of that journal across the research community. So I'm identifying here very easily institutions that are raising the impact of my journal, because what they've published in my journal is higher than my average impact. And of course, you don't stop here. These 26 documents can be analyzed, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm taking these 26 documents, and now I'm looking at the authors. So the authors from the Swedish Museum of Natural History, these documents have all appeared in my journal. And what is the journal normalized impact, journal normalized citation impact of these documents? It's quite strong, right? I mean, the publication from Artem Kuczynski is giving me an impact that is more than twice above my own journal. So next week, when I receive a manuscript from that author, I might be inclined to accept it, maybe a little bit more than another author, because I know from experience that the 5 papers that I've already accepted from that authors are actually raising my profile significantly, my impact very, very strongly. So these are metrics that you would find. This is a screenshot from Insights here, Insights benchmarking and analytics. Okay, in Insights, there's other ways, of course, to study the landscape of citation. One of them, I think is very relevant in your case, is the local journal utilization report. You have a way in Insights to understand what a university is citing. So, university, of course, you can look at where they publish, you can look at who they collaborate with, but you don't see really what they are citing unless you use this tool. So are they using your journals? Your journals are read by universities. How do you know that they are read? How do you know they are cited? Well, there is a tool within Insights. It's called Local Journal Utilization Report, where I'm looking at a time period of 2006 till today for the University of Warsaw here. This is just an example out of 12,000 organizations available within the platform. And I'm looking at the journals that they've cited. So it's not where they publish, it's what they cite, okay? So these are the journals that they mostly cited within that time period. Of course, you might not be surprised by finding these journals here, but you could also add another filter, Polish journals. So what are the Polish journals that this university is citing? Once again, you can do it within the platform, and now you see, how they're using journals. Are they heavily citing one or the other? Are they subscribing to these journals? Because if they're citing the journal, the authors are interested by these journals. Do they have access to these journals? Are they subscribing? And that's also something publishers are doing. They are looking at how organizations are using their own journals, and if they find that the organizations are not subscribing to these journals, maybe it's an angle to approach the organization and propose, access to their content. So this could be also very interesting. It's the ability to look at what authors are using and how heavily your own papers, your own journals are cited by them from these organizations, of course. So we've talked also about identifying strong authors. I was looking at normalized metrics, and I was identifying strong people within certain categories. What I'm looking at here is a combination of the Web of Science and Insights. You can search the Web of Science today on a certain topic and start drilling into the documents you're finding. I'm searching here on carbon capture, which is a very important topic these days, because I want to know key opinion leaders. I want to identify experts within this group. I want to be able to drill into this content without using categories. Categories are very broad. Right now, I'm just searching by keywords. I'm identifying a perimeter of analysis. I'm finding thousands of results. And then I use metrics that are available within the Web of Science, such as highly cited in field. Highly cited papers are papers that are within the top 1% of the most cited papers in a certain category. So very quickly, by searching carbon capture in the Web of Science, I'm defining a perimeter, and then I'm filtering on the highly cited papers because I want to study this group. Why would I want to study this group? It's because they are the top 1% of the most cited papers in this topic today. This is important. For me, I want to identify who, when, in which journals, from which country, with which funding. So I can drill into this. I can take this, put it into Insights, and start looking at, the authors. Who are the authors who publish these papers? Maybe these authors are people I can start contacting. You always have on Worth Record, you have email addresses of the main authors. You can use that maybe to contact them. Many of the Web of Science users are using it to contact and start collaborating with other communities. As a publisher, this is also interesting because you are able to identify strong players within a certain topic and identifying key opinion leaders in it because these guys have all published highly cited papers in this topic, in top 1%. When I look at the top 1%, I eliminate 99%, okay? So I'm really focusing on what made a strong impact. And this is using, by the way, essential science indicators, which you have within your Web of Science access. And, of course, once you identify someone, you can look at, the journals in which they have published. understand the strategies. Is your journal close to these journals? You can see that, by the way, in journal citation report. You can see journal relationship, how they cite each other. So you might see that your journal is actually close. The profile of your own journal is actually close to one of these profiles. So maybe this researcher might be interested in publishing in your journal. There's another aspect also that is very interesting to look at within the Web of Science core collection, thanks to the metadata we capture. It's the funding aspect. From the publication we index from your journals and selected journals in the core collection, we capture funding information from acknowledgement of authors. So when an author is acknowledging a certain source of funding, we are able to bring it within the record and then, of course, analyze it. So within a certain domain, you can analyze the funding sources. Where is the money coming from? Because this is very important. With especially nowadays with the different mandates around open access coming from these funders. You need to understand that landscape. You need to look at it and be able to quickly analyze it. And this is what I'm doing here. I'm taking a topic, I'm decomposing it by funding sources, and then of course I can start drilling, who received funding from the European Union, for this research on carbon capture. I'm identifying here different sources, different countries here. This is just. Say again? I was looking at the top 10, I think, of the countries. So in terms of volume, by the way, this is only volume, so amount of documents funded by the European Union on carbon capture. So I'm really looking at a small set here. I'm not looking at the, just the whole Web of Science core collection. I've already filtered on a very specific topic, carbon capture. Okay, so I don't find pollen here. Maybe there are if I'm looking at the whole list. I'm only looking at top 10%. Top 10 countries here found on that list. Okay, so Poland is probably there. I could drill into Poland here, just like I would drill into Spain and bring out the organizations who have received the funding from the European Union. Once again, I'm only looking at carbon capture here. So these are sources of funding that you can find, within the platform itself. Sorry? Yes? No, they're not. One is within the other. Yeah, one is within the other because we're able to work with hierarchies. And this is, by the way, the case with organizations as well. So we have organizations like a university and then university hospitals and so on. So we can work with hierarchies as well within Insights to allow you for better analytics. Thank you. I think we have a section.